Peter over here was gracious enough to let us use this about 6 o'clock last night. He said, yes, we could use this location. So very gracious and thankful for him letting us use this location. My name is Blair Schaffer. I'm Potter County Commissioner, Precinct 2. I've been in office for about 10 months now. One of my goals is to have Amarillo, Potter County, and Randall County all working together as a team. We are one entity. If it happens to Potter County, it has to happen to Amarillo. If it happens to Amarillo, it has to happen to Randall County. Precinct 2 is all within inside the city limits of Amarillo. So that's another reason I want to work closely with Amarillo officials, is because we are one team and the citizens are who we represent. I want to make sure y'all are served properly by what we're doing. A little bit of information I want to give out right now, kind of go over. We do have our constitutional elections going on right now, and it's very important that you learn what these constitutional ballot items are. Please do your research. I did provide some newspapers here from the League of Women Voters on these issues, but you're looking at billions of dollars on these ballots that are going to be affecting us. So with that being said, it's worth our time to research, find out what your beliefs are, your opinions, your thoughts, use the resources that you feel are right for you to get your information from, and please go vote. On Wednesday, over here at the fairgrounds, which is one of our voting locations for Precinct 2, we have one person vote at the Tri-State Fairgrounds. We got about 10,000 registered voters in this area, and for only one person to vote at Tri-State Fairgrounds is pretty sad. It did get a little bit better. I think we had 24 people vote yesterday at the fairgrounds. So voting today is from 9 to 3 at the Santa Fe building. Next week, Monday through Friday, the voting centers will be open from 8 to 5. The Santa Fe building on Thursday and Friday will be open from 7 to 6. So you can go to these voting centers, easily get in and get out. There's no lines. It literally takes you a few minutes. The most time will be doing your little bit of research and seeing how you'd like to vote on these proposals. It said they will be going into state law. It said some of these are dealing with billions of dollars. So we need to make sure that our voice is heard and how we feel is appropriate to vote on these agenda items. Potter County Courthouse, we're looking at hopefully having it open and going early in the year. We're working on getting movers and that orchestrated. There's some little kinks that we're working out right now, but the construction and architects got their punch list going, and they're working through that punch list. We're working with the city to get our certificate of occupancy, and we should have that certificate shortly and then start to move. We're working on some areas in the courtrooms, and then also working on some of our changes and stuff in our records room. Once we get that resolved, we'll be up and going. It's going to be a beautiful courthouse. So really looking forward to having the new courthouse there downtown for the DA and for the district judges and everybody. I want to invite everybody. We do have our Potter County Commissioner Court meetings. They're open to the public. You can watch them online or in person. They start at 9 in the morning on the second and fourth Monday each month. The agendas are posted online on Friday through Saturday and Sunday, so that you can look at all the agendas. The public has access to the same time, same agendas, the same time I have access to them. So we don't try to spring nothing on nobody. Why didn't you let me know about that? The public, y'all have access to the agenda items the same time I get access to the agenda items. As an official, I love communicating with y'all and knowing what you want on those agenda items, what your feelings are, what your opinions are. Because as an official, I can only see so much. I can only be so many places at so many times. So, and I'm still fairly young, so I need y'all's experience on stuff, your opinions, your thoughts. This is your county. This is your city. So when you see something, if you're passionate about it, please get a hold of me. I left my cards here on the table. Also got them on the table over there. I'm very active on social media. Blair Schaffer, Potter County Commissioner, or Blair Schaffer, Potter County Commissioner, Precinct 2. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. Whatever it takes, get a hold of me. My personal cell phone number's on there. My cell phone's always with me. So just get a hold of me, and I love to communicate and work with the public. That's pretty much what I got going on at the moment. Does anybody have any questions for me at all?
Well, are we going to deal with the possible threats coming into our community from the south border?
We'll probably have some more speakers that can speak better on that. I think that's something that we do need to be aware of and watching the whole time. Luckily here in Amarillo, we are a little bit isolated from those areas and we're not as attractive to them as some other bigger areas because we don't have a lot of the services that they're looking for. But that's always a threat with people coming into us that we don't know who they are, they're not vetted, they're not here legally. So it is always definitely a concern. That's something we can get with the sheriff with and just the county officials or like myself and start making plans for if it does get worse, what can we do? And not to wait until it even gets worse, but start looking at items and stuff that we can do ahead of time to prevent that from becoming a big, big issue. Yes, ma'am.
As it gets colder, we're seeing an increase in panhandling. Is there anything we can do as a community to help with that, or are there any plans?
There's a lot of stuff that we can do. Both the sheriff and the police chief's working on it. The city mayor's working on that. Mr. Kraft or Chief Burkeville might be able to speak a little better on the panhandling. But one of the things that the city's doing right now, they are putting signs up that are asking people not to panhandle. It's one of those things, our community is very giving and gracious, and when we're giving to them, it just attracts someone to want to do it more. There's been a lot of legislation done, well, I should say, there's been court cases done, and it's kind of restricting the city on some of the ordinances they have, restricting them from doing it because you're getting on freedom of speech, and also they're in a public location. So they're kind of getting a lot of gray areas on, well, this person's not really bothering nobody, he's not committing a crime, he's sitting here on the street corner, he's holding a sign, this is free speech. And yes, it is a nuisance, it is dangerous, but as we start moving through the legal system, the hands of the law enforcement kind of get tied on what they can and can't do. Plus, if we do arrest them for a reason, they go out to county jail, most times they'll get released fairly soon and right back doing it, and it just costs the county and the city money in order to do that. But it is an issue, the city is looking at it on items that they can do. Of course, we're always open for suggestions. We do also have the transformation station being built over there on Bowie and Fifth Street. And we're hoping to have that up and running in order to help serve them also. So they will have a place to be that's safe and secure. We know where people are at. And they have the services provided for them to help them get up and moving again and not on the street corner causing traffic problems or stuff like that. Anybody else? All right, like I said, thank you everybody for being here. Our next meeting is going to be January 20th. It'll be at the Alamo Center over there in the barrio. We're looking at about having it at the same time, maybe a little bit earlier. Still in the works on a lot of that stuff. We should be having Mayor Cole Stanley speaking at that one with us also. And League of Women Voters, I'll still be working with some other speakers. So on these town hall meetings, I'd love to see 100 to 200 people at this. I'm happy with the 20 that we have here today, but the more that we can get, the more community involvement that we can have, the better that the community is going to be overall. With that, I'd like to bring up Chief Burkeville.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate the invite here. We've made a lot of community meetings over the last few months, just the police department, and most of the groups have been a little bit smaller than this actually, and we've got to sit down and have some one-on-one conversations with people. But I really appreciate your presence here because that shows how much you care about your community. So thanks for being here and thanks for the invite, Commissioner Schaffer. My name is Martin Birkenfeld. I've lived in Amarillo my entire life. I grew up over in the South Lawn, kind of South Lawn / Lamar neighborhood. I went to Lamar Elementary and Fannin Middle School and then Caprock. And man, I just love it. A good place to live. And we put that in our mission statement, a great place to live, work, and play. And I truly believe in that. My friends and family are here, and I'm just grateful to be in a community that supports generally the right things, in my opinion, the right of people to be free, but also the right of people to be free of crime and free of disorder. And so that is my mission, is to make sure our city does not turn into any level of decay that we see in some parts of the world and even some parts of our country here. So that's my job. I've been at the police department almost 33 years, and it just has gone by in a flash because I love my job, and it's been such a joy to be here. I made chief in May of 2020, and so here I am. And man, I just can't say how much I appreciate the support we get in Amarillo as well for our police officers. I get a lot of folks sometimes that say, well, gosh, you sure have a tough job. And I have to be honest and say, yeah, it's kind of tough, but honestly, we get so much support. I mean, it feeds me and builds my energy when I hear that. So thank you all for that support. We're doing pretty good as far as our overall staffing. We have 380 authorized positions. Our city council just added 4 more positions to us this year. We've got about 25 openings currently. We run our own police academy, so we're always going to have a certain number of openings, because if one police officer retires today, I can't just hire somebody else tomorrow. We put our own academy together. So it generally takes about 12 to 18 months to fill each position. So we always kind of have a running opening list. But as we continue to grow as a city, I'm working to continue to grow the police department so we can, at a minimum, maintain our level of service that we provide. So the overall city growth is around 1% to 2%. So if you do the math there, even me doing cop math, I can figure out we need about 3 or 4 people per year to add 3 or 4 police officers per year to add to our staff. So that's what I've been working to do over the last few years. One thing that helps us with our staffing is recruiting in the community. And so I ask you that if you know somebody in your circle of family or friends or professional contacts that you think might be a good police officer, send them our way. You know, we don't have an age limit anymore on hiring. The state took that away gratefully in this last legislative session. But certainly we're always looking at young people, because I look at this as a career, and I want people to look at it as a career. We invest a lot of time in training folks. Our training cycle for a brand new police officer is a little over a year long. They spend about 7 months in our police academy and then another 5 months in field training before they actually get out on their own as a police officer. So we're always recruiting. You know, we're doing a lot more targeted recruiting lately, because we recognize that we can't just put an ad in the paper like we did 30 years ago and then see who shows up. So we have to go look in places where we may not have looked before. Both, you know, we do universities and Army bases and things like that, but we've also added some things to that. We're doing targeted recruiting events in places where we might not think about recruiting in the past. I used this example the other day in the council meeting. You know, in the past we thought, well, criminal justice classes are a great place to recruit, and that's still true, but we also have to look at other professions that might not be directed as much, like communications, for example. We love to have police officers who are good communicators. So we're trying to think creatively. We revamped our recruiting staff recently and our ad hoc recruiting team to make sure they understand what our mission is. And we've also done some targeted recruiting events like women in law enforcement, because we recognize that's a weak area for us. We're at about 13% females. The national average is 12. We'd like to see that a much, much higher, because we want our department to be diverse in many ways, because the diversity of a workforce helps build character for the department as a whole. So that's one of my goals. Our crime in Amarillo, it kind of depends on your perspective, because certainly if you've been a crime victim in the last year, your perspective is crime's up 100%. But overall, our crime is trending down in Amarillo, about 10% overall when we look at our index crimes. And those are things like homicide, aggravated assault, which is where somebody's seriously injured, rape, which actually includes sexual assaults of all kinds, including against children, which is the vast majority of our sexual assaults. It includes burglary, theft, and stolen cars, as well as robberies and homicides. So when we look at that compared to the same time last year, we're down about 10%. And our big decrease is in homicides. Last year, we had an outrageous number of homicides in Amarillo, about 26 people that died because of a murder. This year, we're sitting at 12 people. Still a big number, but you know, we're making some progress, targeting some folks who are doing shootings, targeting gangs and things like that. There's a certain number of homicides that are domestic violence. We had 2 child deaths that were from child abuse. And so those are things that are a little more difficult for us to prevent beforehand, but nonetheless, we're committed to holding those people accountable. Our rate of solving homicides is very high, and that's a legacy that I inherited even before I started at the police department. Some of y'all may have seen the recent article that I think KMR did on Sarah Dawn Lawrence, and that really changed things back in the early 80s on how we did homicide investigations, and that's continued, thankfully, for the last 40 years. So we dedicate a significant amount of time and resources to homicides, because we feel like the victim and the victim's family deserve closure. And so we solve about 95% of our cases. Those open cases are not forgotten either. Last year, we added a cold case investigator And that investigator's sole job is to look at all of we have 51 open cases from the beginning of the Amarillo Police Department's history of unsolved homicides. That investigator is looking at each of those 51 cases and seeing what have we missed, what technology has changed over the last few years to help us to be able to solve those homicides. I know he's resubmitted some DNA evidence, and we're looking at things like family DNA databases to see if there's some ways we can track down who is responsible for those homicides. The good news is the likelihood of you randomly being involved in violent crime is not that great. The majority of our violent crime is focused around things like dealing drugs, being involved in gangs, and being out late at night in clubs. And when I say clubs, it could be events that aren't formal clubs, it's pop-up events or event centers that host after-hours parties that aren't regulated as far as alcohol, drugs, and things like that. And then people end up getting into dispute and then get into shooting or stabbing or some type of assault. So if you have influence over a young person, that's one of the things that you can help us most with, is making sure the young people understand the dangers. All of us probably had somebody in our family, grandma or aunt or somebody that said, nothing good happens after midnight. Well, I spent a significant amount of my career working the midnight shift, and I can attest that grandma was right. Nothing really good happens after midnight. That's when we have the majority of our violent crime. That's when we have the majority of our crashes that involve fatalities is between midnight and 6 a.m. So we need to keep our young people safe. The state recently took away the juvenile curfew, so we're no longer able to enforce that. And I don't agree with that. In fact, I wrote a letter to the state saying, I don't agree with that. We don't overuse that. We very rarely wrote tickets on that, but it gave us a good way to talk to kids when they're out at 2 in the morning, say, hey, what are you doing? You're in violation of curfew. Let's call some parents. Now we're just kind of like Mr. Schaffer said, they've taken that away from us, so we're just kind of stuck with just letting them run free, I guess, unless they're doing something overtly illegal. Nonetheless, we're going to keep working on it. We'll keep an eye on kids. Some things about crime, I know was brought up about the terrorism aspect, and we're definitely cognizant of that. Whether or not you like the federal government or not, they play an important role in homeland security. And so we have one officer assigned to each of our 3-letter agencies, the ATF, the DEA, the FBI, and that other one, Homeland Security Investigations. And we feel like that's an important piece of our policing here at home. Homeland security starts at home, and that starts with you and I and our local law enforcement, and it builds out to the state and the federal government. Much like you saw in Israel, if an attack occurs in a community, it's generally local police, a local law enforcement that's going to respond to that first. So we have to maintain that readiness, and so that's why we have somebody attached to each of those agencies, so we can maintain a level of awareness of intelligence and information. Our crime analysts, we have 4 crime analysts, and they are also connected to those agencies. In fact, I took my lead crime analyst down to the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force meeting a couple of months ago to make sure she was plugged in with the federal agencies on information. And I go to that meeting about twice a year down in Dallas at the FBI office to make sure that, first of all, they don't forget about us up here in Amarillo, but most importantly, that we get that information we need to make sure our community is safe. It's a little scary sometimes because I've not been to a meeting yet where there wasn't at least one little nexus of terrorism right here in our community. So we definitely have to be aware of that. The good news is there's not a large amount of intel right now that's saying Amarillo is in any immediate danger, but we can't just let our guard down. We have to be aware that if you see something weird or suspicious, report that to us and we'll see what we can do. Don't call the FBI, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying call your local law enforcement, because we're the ones that are going to be able to immediately respond and get on something, especially when you see something that looks like it could be an imminent threat. We talked about panhandling a little bit. That is an issue, and we see it as a safety issue for people who are driving and people who are walking in our streets. If somebody steps out in the street, holds up traffic, that causes a problem. And so that's kind of how we're approaching it. The constitutional issue, Commissioner Schaffer is exactly right, in my opinion. We've dealt with that. So imagine I'm standing on a street corner on a sidewalk where any one of us can walk, and I'm holding a sign up that says, I support Commissioner Schaffer. That's perfectly legal. The unfortunate side of that is if I turn my sign over and it says, give me money, there's nothing wrong with that either. It's constitutionally protected speech. So we're having to approach that issue with, okay, Can I step out in the street with that sign? No, I can't step out in the street and block traffic up. And that's what some folks are doing when they're panhandling. And we even had a guy killed last year. He was on the side of the road, a car veered off, which happens sometimes, and ended up killing him, but he was in the process of panhandling. So we don't want to see anybody killed or injured because of that. And that's how we're approaching that. It also creates feelings of being unsafe. Nobody wants to be sitting in their car and somebody come bang on their window. It scares us, it makes us feel unsafe, and it should, even if that person's not a criminal. That's behavior that we don't like. So we're doing everything we can within the bounds of the law to work on this, but I know the signs are going to help. The biggest thing that can help reduce panhandling, I would say, is to stop giving to people on the side of the road. I know that sounds cruel and heartless, but I firmly believe we have a lot of wonderful agencies and churches and community members that are doing good in our community that could use our contributions in a much better way, where we know where that money's going versus just giving it to somebody where you really just don't know. Is it feeding drugs? Is it truly going to food? Is it just being squandered? You don't know. But if you give to a church, or you give to United Way or some of the organizations in our community that are doing good, I would prefer that much more than giving on the side of the road. As far as our strategies for continuing to reduce crime, our council's asked us for increased visibility. I absolutely am on board with that. It makes sense. And I hear that a lot in our community meetings. Hey, we sure like seeing police officers in our neighborhood. And I agree. And so we're going to come up with some additional strategies. We're having a little crunch on getting new police vehicles right now. That's just part of the national supply chain. But that's only part of the equation. The other part is looking at all of our specialized units, looking at our detective units, everything that we have that we can put a marked car in. We're going to do that every time we go to an event. We want to wear our uniforms, just make sure we're seen as much as possible in the community to provide that level of security and that feeling of safety, which in my opinion is almost as important as the actual safety. I can get up here all day long and tell you crime's down 10%, but if you go home and you don't feel safe, that doesn't help you a lot. So I try to make sure, especially all our new police officers, understand it's important to make people feel safe. And the only way we can do that is to be present, to be approachable, and to be trusted in our community. So that's our, probably at the very top of our goal list. We're also looking at a lot of technology, a lot of technology that we can use that wasn't available a few years ago. Things like automatic license plate readers. You know, for years, police officers have always written down license plate numbers. And in fact, when I was on patrol, we used to have a patrol sergeant. He would drive through apartment complexes every night and start running tags when he saw a car that looked weird. And almost every night he would find a stolen car that had been abandoned somewhere. Well, now we can automate some of that. So we're going to put license plate readers in several areas of the city so we can have information, or we can put out information if we need it. For an example, if the other night we had a lady that was lost. And so if we have a vehicle like that where we're looking for somebody who's lost, who might have dementia or something like that, or a child abduction or something like that, we can put that in our system. And immediately, if that car goes through an area where there's a license plate reader, the officers will get an alert and say, hey, that car is in this area, and we can go find that. We've tested that technology for the last year, and it's been a lot more successful than I had expected, actually. We've had a lot of officers that have been able to catch stolen cars because they'll go through the license plate reader, and then they go downstream, and sure enough, there's that car, and there's the person driving it. So a lot of excitement there with our technology on license plate readers. We're also going to leverage cameras. Obviously, the red light cameras have gone away, but there's still cameras on a lot of intersections. And the primary purpose of those cameras is to check, to make sure everything's working correctly. So our traffic department can look and see if they see a problem at an intersection, or if they get an indicator that the red lights are down or somebody calls in, they can look in those cameras and say, oh yeah, there's a problem, and then send a tech out. Or they can say, well, no, everything's flowing smooth and don't have to waste that time. So we're piggybacking off of that so we can look at those intersections for crime problems or for crime cars. Last year, we had an officer that he was going to conduct a traffic stop, and the guy decided he didn't want to do that. He put it in reverse and just ran over a motorcycle officer and then took off from the scene. Fortunately, the officer was able to get just a couple of letters in the tag, and some good old-fashioned detective work helped track that guy down a few hours later. But it would have been nice to have a few more cameras in that area so we could see, okay, here's what that car looked like. And we did find one piece of a doorbell camera that helped us kind of narrow it down, which was vital, but some more technology would help us. So we're trying that out as well. Third and McMaster's, it's no secret. We've got cameras at a lot of intersections, but we've added one of our own cameras at Third and McMaster's to test it out. And it's really good technology. It can see all four directions And, there's a convenience store there on the corner that we can see and kind of keep an eye on things and be able to see stuff in real time when it's occurring. For example, if the convenience store has a robbery, we can immediately pull that camera up and look at that store and see if we can see the suspect vehicle or maybe a description of the suspect, see what's going on, and give that information to the officers as they're going to the scene. The other piece that we're looking at is unmanned aerial surveillance, which everybody calls it drones, but we have drones with cameras on them. We've been trying that out again for the last year. Some of the smaller stuff that we've used has way exceeded our expectations. So we're moving full force into a bigger program. And our goal is to use drones as a first responder in some cases. So for example, if we have that robbery at the convenience store, that might trigger an automatic launch of one of our drones. And it goes up and it immediately starts heading to where our computer-aided dispatch tells it to go. And then at some point, an officer picks that up and starts manually controlling it. The idea is that drone can be on scene much faster in a lot of cases than a police car, because the drone just makes a straight line versus having to go through streets and red lights. The ability to have that surveillance has been vital on some cases already. We've seen that during the flooding. We used drone surveillance to be able to overfly that area day and night to make sure nobody was putting themselves in danger. And sure enough, we saw a lot of cars driving around barricades, driving through the water. And so we could send an officer immediately to intercept them and say, hey, putting yourself in danger, you got to leave. So I'm really excited about that aspect of technology. I was a little hesitant on it, frankly, a couple of years ago. I just wasn't convinced it was going to be that helpful. I was wrong. It's going to be very helpful. Some of the things we can do as far as community strategies, I already talked about give safe, give smart. In other words, don't give on the side of the road. Take your keys with you every single time from your car. And we're seeing a reduction in car thefts. We've still got too many, and at least 60%, and by some counts 80% of those car thefts occur because the keys or the key fob are in the car. A portion of those are even running, and I know it's going to get cold here tomorrow, and it's tempting when you're getting ready for work, go out and warm your car up. Just don't do it. You got to be cold for a minute, but it's better than being out and walking because you don't have a car. So if you can always take your keys with you, lock your car, take stuff out of the car, you'll help reduce the number of stolen cars we have in Amarillo, and that's key. The other thing is, this is Texas, and we like to carry our firearms, and I totally support that. But when you do, there's a big responsibility that comes with that. And one of those responsibilities is you can't leave it in your car unattended, because we lose about 5 to 7 guns in Amarillo stolen from cars every month. So even if it's only 5, that's 60 guns. Is that my math right? 60 guns per year that are in the hands of criminals just because they were able to find a car that was probably unlocked and the gun was in the glove box. It's an easy steal for thieves, and they take advantage of that. So take your keys, take your stuff out, and certainly secure your gun. The other part of that is you don't want a young person to get a hold of that gun who doesn't have the experience that they need to be able to handle it safely. We also don't want those guns getting in the hands of gang members, which are a lot of times young people, and they're doing violent crimes in our community. So please take your keys and take your guns out of your car. Some of our needs, I think I already talked about recruiting enough, but certainly we can use all the help we can. We have a little bit of an issue over the last few years with a reduction in the number of applications that we get. And that's a little bit to do with the national narrative about policing, and a little bit to do with finance, there's just a lot of factors that have come together over the last 5 to 10 years to drive down our numbers of recruits. We refuse to lower our standard. And I think that's a good thing. I'd rather work short than have police officers who don't have the right stuff, don't have the right heart for service. And that's what we're looking for. So anything you can do to help us recruit, let people know Amarillo is a great place to live. Come live here, come work here. And also policing is not, if you listen into the national narrative, you're probably not listening to what's going on here in Amarillo, because like I said earlier, our community loves us. We have 355 professional police officers on board, and they do a great job. They make my job easy, and it's a fun job. I've loved it. I mean, there's been days where, like in any job, you like, man, that was a tough day, and should I come back tomorrow? But in the end, over the last almost 33 years, it's just been really a good career for me, and I highly recommend it to folks. I almost went into the fire service, but I was kind of 50-50 there. When I was young, I did both. I did a little volunteer firefighting, and I just wasn't a good medic, so I chose the police department. We also need support for incremental growth, and our city council has done a great job of giving us a budget that gives us what we need. And so it's my job to fill those positions, my job to take on those technology projects. But we'll certainly be asking for more in the future, because looking down the road 5, 10, 20 years, I want to build our department into a sustainable, technology savvy organization. And in the past, I know we've struggled with that, because we buy something today and we realize 5 years from now, that's going to be obsolete. Well, we need to have a plan 5 years from now to replace that. So we're trying to do a better job with that. And then finally, any support we can give to our young people in the community, I'm 100% behind that. Obviously, you know, I'm almost 55 years old and set in my ways in some ways, so it's hard to change my mind. But when I was 15, you probably could have set me on a course for good or bad, depending on who I was around. And unfortunately, I had some good mentors at Caprock High School that set me on a good path. Anything we can do to support our young people in this community is going to make a big difference, because that's where we go off the rails. The common thread we see with gang membership, with young people who are involved in shootings or drugs or drug dealing, is a lack of parental oversight. And whether that's parents or grandparents, we got to realize there's some folks that they don't have the capacity to take care of the kids. And it may not be their fault. They may have to work all the time, and so they just don't have the ability to be there as much as they want to. Or they may have issues of their own and they're not able to take care of kids. So who in the community is going to step up and do that? And I would argue it's all of our jobs. We have to take on a mentorship role in some way. We have to, if whatever business we're with, we have to support the idea that, hey, let's get some interns in, let's get young people in, and let's teach them skills they need. Even if we know that that person is going to be a challenge to deal with, who else is going to do it? We all have to step up. So anything we can do to support young people is going to make a difference in crime in our community. It's going to make us safer. So that was a lot, but I'm here to answer any questions that you have. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm coming off of 58 in Washington, and I think people think Washington Street is a speedway. Anyway, around 11 o'clock almost every night, there is 1 or 2 individuals with pump rockets. And I can tell you, they're not going 50 or 60 miles an hour, and it's bad. And then if you go down Sonsi and Coulter, they drive between the cars, and they've got cameras on their cats. That's kind of scary.
It is.
Especially when they pull out in front of oncoming traffic.
It is, and we've had a number of motorcycle fatalities in the last year because of it, and it's sad because it's very preventable. We work on that from time to time. Obviously, we have motorcycle officers of our own that are out quite a bit. That's their primary job, is traffic enforcement. After hours, in fact, this weekend we have an operation going where we're targeting in particular parties, but we're also looking for drag racing and things like that. We've seized a couple of cars over the last couple of years to make a very public statement that if you're going to race on our streets, you're going to lose your car. And that's helped a little bit, but we've still got a lot of work to do. And I grew up on Washington Street there in 40th, so I know it's always been a problem, but I'm sure that this motorcycle racing makes it even worse, and we've seen that. We do have some challenges with, once we see a motorcycle commit a traffic violation, most time they pull over and we're able to handle it, but there's a few that think it's smart to run from the officers. One of the young men that died this summer had ran from officers one day and got thrown in jail the very next day doing the same thing and ends up getting killed. So there's some challenges there, and again, some of that has to do with peer pressure. We just need to put some reverse peer pressure, I guess you could say, to let young people know, hey, you can't do this. We've done a couple of different events out of Amarillo Dragway that can encourage people, come on out. If you want to race, we'll bring a police car out here. You can race a police car on a track where it's in a controlled environment. And it gives us a chance to talk to those people face to face and say, hey, don't race on the streets. Come out here and race. It's like $20 and you're not going to get a ticket. The ticket's going to be $200 or $300. Or you may lose your motorcycle or your car, or maybe even lose your life. Let's find alternative ways. But I agree with you. There's definitely an issue with some motorcycles in Amarillo that are going way above and beyond their capabilities and putting other people in danger. Yes, ma'am.
In regards to the technology that y'all are going to be utilizing in the next few years, can you go over that in detail, specifically the drones and the license plate readers?
Yeah, so the license plate readers most of them will be stationary. We have some mobile ones as well, but the primary purpose is for targeted vehicles. If we have a stolen vehicle, that license plate gets entered in there and it's on what they call a hot list. And basically, if a car, the stolen car goes through that area, it reads that license plate and says, hey, the stolen car is in this area. Well, that's only one piece of evidence. It doesn't mean that anything has happened. So let's imagine the car is upstream or the officer's upstream and catches the car. They pull the car over. Well, that's not an automatic arrest. We've got to investigate who's the driver. There's a small portion of those cases where people recover their own car and then they forget to call us and say, hey, I found my stolen car. So it still shows reported as stolen. So we don't want to arrest the owner of their own car. So we have to do more investigation. So license plate readers are just one piece of that. Certainly when we have abducted children or something like that, it's going to be a whole lot more important. The other thing it can do is when we do have things like we had a shooting on Polk Street a couple of weeks ago, and we've got those guys in custody, but we could go back if we didn't know who the suspects were, and we could say, okay, who was on that street? What cars were on that street during the 15-minute period that shooting occurred, and start looking and see, okay, is this a viable suspect? Is this a viable suspect? And just sort through that data. That's what our detectives did on the motorcycle officer that got ran over. Instead of automatically doing it, though, they had to go down to the license plate office there at the county and say, okay, give us all these vehicles that have these two letters in there. And they got a list of like 60 vehicles. And so they had to sort through that and then look at that little fuzzy picture and say, okay, might that match up? They narrowed it down to a list of about 10 or 12. Then they went and knocked on doors and said, hey, do you have this car? And sure enough, eventually they knocked on the door. You could just tell by the look on the person's face that, okay, here's another red flag. So it's more of it's certainly not a catch-all, end-all thing. It's just one piece of the investigation. We still have a lot of other stuff to do, even though we have that license plate information. On the drones, we're using those strictly on a call-by-call basis. So there's no reason for us to do anything other than that. So I know there's obviously privacy concerns. I would have a concern if a drone's flying above my house, filming what's going on in my backyard, but that's not our goal. We're not collecting data on anybody. We're not doing anything with the drones other than responding to situations. So the way we've used them in the last couple of years is there's a couple of on patrol. And so the cases I can think of most often are where an officer encounters a suspect and the suspect runs on foot and we lose sight of them. So then we kind of hold a perimeter, launch the drone and see what we can see. And in a couple of cases, hey, there they are, they're hiding in a doghouse in this yard. And so it makes our officers safer because they're not having to go yard to yard. We can kind of narrow that down. But we can also see, hey, yeah, the person's armed with a gun. And so then we can slow down our approach and say, okay, maybe we need to call them to us or something like that. We've used them on barricaded persons frequently. That happens, a couple dozen times a year where we have somebody for whatever reason decides they're not going to go to jail, or that they're suicidal, or that in one case we had a hostage taking. And so we can use the drones as kind of a third part of the perimeter there where they're looking above and can see what's going on. And in one case we were at a hotel and I could literally see on my screen everything that was going on without having to be in danger. And so we can put our officers a little farther back and take some pressure off the suspect in some cases so that we can slow things down, negotiate, and get that person in custody without any gunshots being fired. Does that kind of help what you're in?
Yes, and then one more part of that, do you plan on using any of this technology to help with human trafficking and drug trafficking?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because part of the investigative tool there we use is, there's a network of license plate readers all over the country in Texas, and HIDA, and I can't remember at the moment what that stands for. HIDA is our drug task force for the state, and they already compile that information. So for drug trafficking, for example, we come across a car that's in Amarillo and we find drugs in the car. We can take that license plate information and track that back. Okay, where did they come from? And okay, they came from Arizona. Okay, they came straight from Mexico, and then start building our investigation out there, because then we can start going back to the source. Where did that come from?
So what you're saying is all of these will be interconnected with the other police?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, there's so many acronyms out there, I can't remember at the moment, but we're connected to a national system. And so anything that comes across our license plate readers here gets fed into the national system, and then vice versa. So if somebody hits a license plate reader in California, if we inquire on that, we can find out where that is. And then at some point that data gets dumped because there's just so much of it, and we don't want to keep that kind of data forever anyway. We're certainly not intent on tracking any random person. We're tracking specific individuals. Does that make sense?
I wonder about the community officers. How many do you have at the different, are there 5 locations in the community that have been set aside?
We have 7.
7.
At best. Honestly, I'd like to have a lot more because those community officers, they have a small, about 1 square mile area that they're responsible for. We've targeted some areas where people have asked for it and also where we have some challenges. So right now we have an officer in the East Ridge area. We have an officer in the North Heights neighborhood, in the Barrio neighborhood right there at the Wesley Community Center. We have somebody in South Lawn. We have somebody in San Jacinto. I feel like I forgot one. But that's kind of how we have that spaced out. Right now, we have about 10 officers assigned to those. We're not able to grow it right just yet, but we are looking at potential expansion because they've done a lot of good. And I know Officer Blanco here in the East Ridge neighborhood, I'm sure some of y'all know him because he's very well known in the community. He's done a good job of connecting with our refugee and immigrant population here to help build trust in that community. So we certainly see a lot of value in that program, but we're always evaluating it, and we may be shrinking it or growing it at any given time based on the needs.
Well, do you have any loss of energy with the meter readers in downtown Amarillo? Do you have officers assigned to meter readers?
No. There's a parking enforcement component, and we were handling that for a while. That's moved over to the marshal's office, but we had a civilian parking enforcement officer. At one time, we had 2 assigned to that in general. One was generally focused downtown, and then one was focused on the rest of the city. And the rest of the city is very important because parking, believe it or not, is something that comes up a lot. And so even though the marshal may handle the bulk of that, we'll still handle some parking complaints. What our civilian parking enforcement officer does is responds to calls during the day because people say, hey, there's a semi parked in this residential area and they're not supposed to be there. And so the parking officer goes over there, and if the car is in violation, then they'll issue either a warning or a ticket. And in some cases, they come back a few days later. If the car's still in violation, they'll tow it. A lot of abandoned trailers or abandoned vehicles are picked up like that. As far as downtown, right now, I think they've only got 1 parking enforcement, so they've been alternating. But obviously, with the recent change in parking downtown, that job is going to change a little bit as well. But there's always plenty of parking issues to deal with all over the city. Does that answer your question?
Well, yeah, and I was just wondering about parking on the sidewalks in certain parts of our city. Is that allowed? Parking on
No,
sidewalks?
No, unless it's specifically otherwise allowed, which I don't know of any place it is, it's illegal to park on the sidewalk. So, I know some people try to avoid having their car completely out in the road and they end up pulling up on the sidewalk, or some people block it with their car in the driveway. It's not at the top of our list of priorities, but we get calls on that sometimes.
Do we call, does the citizen have to call, or does the police officer actually recognize the person?
Generally, you're going to probably call on that. Sometimes, if an officer sees that and it looks to be a big problem, then we're going to go out there and work on it. But we're not going to necessarily just randomly go through neighborhoods checking for that, because there's a lot of times where even though it's technically a violation, nobody in the neighborhood cares about it. And that's as important to us as following the law, if that makes sense. We don't want to, for example, there's stop signs in Amarillo where people roll through them all the time. It's important for us to look at that intersection and say, are we having crashes there all the time? Because I don't want to just send somebody over to write tickets. I mean, what good are they doing? So if they're writing tickets in an area where we have crashes, where we're trying to reduce crashes, then that's what we're going to do. But it's just a spot where people, it's wide open and people just roll through it. Technically a violation, yes, but is it a neighborhood issue? I don't know until we go out there and ask and look around and look at our data. Same thing for parking on sidewalks. In some areas, it's a big problem because there's a lot of foot traffic or bicycle traffic, and so we need to get those done. So we're generally going to rely on the individual neighborhoods to tell us what's going on in there, and if it's a violation, we'll take care of it. If not, then we'll just have to explain that too. Yes, ma'am.
Are there educational requirements to become an officer or for a current officer to advance the position?
So fortunately for me, there wasn't too much to get on because I came right out of high school. We don't have a college education requirement to come on. I always think it's helpful, and I kind of wish I'd gone to college earlier in my life instead of later in life, but there's no college education. We do require a high school diploma or a GED, and that's kind of the base level education requirements. When we do our backgrounds, we look at the whole person. So, if I've got a 21-year-old that doesn't have college but graduated high school, has a couple of jobs, probably going to take them on. And then people ask us about drug usage. If there's major drug usage, we just can't hire you. But if, let's say that 21-year-old, well, yeah, when I was in high school, I tried marijuana a couple of times, probably not going to be a problem for us. We just explain to them, well, you can't do it anymore. And, you got to change your life. So we try to be as flexible as possible. It'd be different if I have a 41-year-old applying and say, yeah, I quit marijuana last year. I'm like, you probably had a few years in your life to figure that out. What else is going on? So we might do a deeper dive into their background and see if they have an addiction issue, because I don't want an officer to have an addiction issue. I just can't. There's too many variables in place that cause problems.
What about civilian positions you have, is it required for that?
Man, I'm so glad you brought that up because I failed to mention that earlier. We have 76 civilian positions, full-time positions, and then we have another 6 or 7 that are part-time positions. And those are pretty cool jobs. We've got civilian crime scene technicians. We have property or actually evidence technicians who work in our evidence warehouse. We have civilian investigative positions that handle kind of minor cases and expedite some of those to where they get looked at, but they don't, if they don't deserve a lot of attention, we just file a case and go on. We have a lot of clerical positions. We have 4 civilian crime analyst positions, which are pretty exciting positions. And then we also have some supervisory and management positions within there. So we've worked hard in the last 5 years, especially to try to build a career ladder for folks, because we realized that we were making some people be an assistant manager, but we didn't have that title. So we bumped up some assistant manager positions. So for example, our records division has about 40 of our civilian positions, and you could come in as a level 1 clerk, and then you could end your career as the records manager. And those are pretty good paying positions, full-time benefits and things like that. A lot of people stay with the city and stay with the police department because of the benefits, even when the pay is not as competitive as I think it should be in the private sector, especially for our civilian positions.
The cold case investigator position, you said it was open or was new to the department. Is that a position in a civilian, or is it only if you're an officer?
It's a police officer position, and we specifically hired a retired investigator who had already had experience in homicide and filing cases and a fingerprint expert and things like that. So it was good timing. He just happened to be ready to come back out of retirement, so we brought him back on board. And so it is a police officer position, but our crime scene technicians, we have, I think, 5 now, civilian crime scene technicians, and they go out to homicides, they go out to all of our complicated crime scenes, and their job is to look for evidence, process fingerprints, blood stains, any other DNA, take pictures, do diagrams, things like that. Something that, yeah, a police officer can do that, but sometimes when a person wants to specialize in that, it's better to have a person who's not a police officer, because then I don't have to send them through a year-long police academy and training. Their training, they can get to work in a couple of months and then learn on the job in some ways. And then we also capitalize on other training we can send them to locally. So some pretty interesting jobs at the police department. We've got, we're proud to say we have the longest tenured city employee right there in the police department. She's been with us almost 51 years now, a long time. And her job is kind of she kind of does everything now because she's been there so long, but she started out as just a clerk in the library, came to the police department a few months into her career and has been there ever since. Yes, sir.
Thank you for your service, to Amarillo. The technology behind the real time crime center, which company is that? Can you share that information?
It's a variety of companies. We're using, we're looking for the best of the best. And there's some that we've tried out for a short period of time. For example, we tried out one license plate reader company. They just weren't able to give us the quality we needed. So we're moving away from them and going to another. There's just different components. For example, we're using Fusus as an integration for things like video and calls for service, officer location. And what Fusus is doing is giving us a view on one page of multiple layers. And I can adjust those layers, and I can even get on my phone if I'm out and about. So I can see, for example, if we have a major call going, instead of me having to call the dispatcher and bug them, I can pull up on Fusus. I can say, okay, I can see where that's at. I can click on it. It'll tell me the call notes. I can see what cars and fire trucks are around there because those are all city assets. It'll show me what cameras are available in the area, just all those different layers that we can add. It even has a weather layer, which it always says windy, but it's just,
And these contracts, whenever we do go with, certain companies, are they approved by city council, by you guys, or, and are they 5-year, 2-year? Have we looked?
It's a variety. Again, some contracts require council approval, especially the bigger ones over 50,000 and things like that. Smaller ones, just city management approval.
Sure.
We're trying to make sure we don't get too deep into any contract that we're not 100% sure is going to be valuable to us 5 years, 10 years down the road. We're looking currently at records management systems, and my goal for that is to actually have at least a 10-year contract or somewhere there where we can build that out, because records management is a big chunk of what we do. We literally have hundreds of thousands of name records, probably over 1 million crime reports over the last few years, and some of those we'll have to have in a new record system. So changing records management systems is a big deal. Any company knows that when you get a new software system, it's always a painful process. So we want to be very deliberate. We don't want to create a system that we're going to have to replace in a couple of years. So for that one, we'll look long-term. For some others, like the license plate readers, some of the components of the crime center, we may look at 1-year contracts to test drive their product. And the good part is most of this is cloud-based. So we're reducing our risk as well. So if somebody hacks into our system at the crime center, we don't want that to affect the rest of the city, and we don't want it to bring down the whole police department. So we're trying to compartmentalize as much as we can, so that if we do lose one system, okay, we can do without that for a minute, let that company sort their problem out, but we can still operate as we need to.
So just one last question. So if we get out of a contract with a company, who would own that information that they were able to collect during the time they were under contract? Is there a component that could be implemented as to where they would have to withdraw all that information? It is a private company. I don't know if they would be required to do such a thing, but maybe would we consider looking into that?
Absolutely, that's a great point. And for example, with our records management, that's one of the components that's built in the contract early is hey, if something goes awry and we have to part ways, then we still own that data, even though you're managing it for us. Yes, ma'am.
You talked about crime, the decrease in crime. Could better lighting in certain areas help? I noticed there's a lot of areas in Amarillo, even on I-40 and I-27, that are not well lit. There's just, light posts, but they haven't been lit in a while, along with other areas in the city that have not been lit in a while. And I know it's a tech dot or a city issue, it's back and forth. In the last 5 years, I've heard the lane go back and forth. Tech dot issue, city issue, tech dot. What do we do about it?
It's a community issue, in my opinion, and I advocate for things like better lighting at parks. I want to put camera systems eventually at all of our parks, just so we can monitor what's going on and put that awareness out there for parks. Lighting somewhat is a perception issue as well as a safety issue. So for example, I think at major intersections, it's very much a safety issue. We need better visibility so we can see when cars are coming day and night. There's an area close to where I live where there's one intersection that really needs better lighting just for traffic safety, but it also is that feeling of safety, especially at parks and areas in neighborhoods. There's some people that like the dark, and so it's not an issue for everybody, but I do feel like it tends to increase the feeling of safety a lot more. I think, especially when you're dealing with your individual house or your business, lighting's got to be a consideration. So if I've got a business, then I'm going to probably want as much lighting 24/7 there as I can, because that's going to discourage people from being able to come up and just try doors or break windows without knowing they'll be seen. Same thing with surveillance. So I've got a business, surveillance stuff has gotten so much cheaper over the last few years for our homes and our businesses. That's a piece of what's driving down our property crime nationwide is better surveillance. Better lighting, again, it just really is very situationally dependent. At night, I kind of like my house to be dark, but I realize that outside that exposes me to potentially somebody coming up and checking to see if anybody's home. The good news for that is burglaries for houses tend to occur during the daytime when people aren't home. Burglaries for businesses obviously tend to occur at night when they're closed. So that's why I think it's probably more important for businesses to be well lit up at night. The neighborhoods in general, I think it's a neighborhood by neighborhood issue. So if enough people in that neighborhood decide, hey, you know what, we want a street light at each corner, then I think that then you got to do the research. Okay, who's going to own that street light? and who's going to pay for it? Because, unfortunately, they're horribly expensive. Even, I just put up a light on a shed that I had the other day. I'm like, wow, how can it be so expensive? And, of course you want the LED lights because they're better energy and better light, but man, $200 or $300 for a little light, and you figure the commercial lights are going to be way more expensive. So there's a cost issue, but I think it's going to come down to communities deciding what's right for their community. And if there's more lighting needed, then that's when you got to do the research, who owns it. And then if you want to come talk to the city, if the city owns it, or if it's TxDOT, talk to TxDOT and say, hey, we want this lighting, and have kind of a unified voice behind it. Not torches and pitchforks, but a good dialogue that says, hey, we'd like to see this, and here's the reasons why.
A quick question about that issue. I drive down Wolfwood a lot, my Tuscaloosa, and at nighttime, when there are events going on, I just noticed it's hard to see, pedestrians crossing, coming from the street over to the other side. Have there been many problems there with people getting injured?
Most of you're talking about Wolfson by Tascosa High School there,
Yes.
yeah. Most of that I can remember just off the top of my head has been during the daytime when kids are crossing, and occasionally somebody gets hit by a car or something. Not very often, but I can see the nighttime thing being an issue. I don't know off the top of my head that we've had issues, but that doesn't mean it's not a problem, because
Maybe an issue to hold their eyes. I just noticed I just having difficulty sometimes seeing people crossing the street in the evening, like ball games, I think.
we have an officer assigned to Tesco, so I'm going to ask him about that and see if that's an issue for them. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Continue with that, from the high school perimeter to the corner on Western, it's totally dark. And there's some strange areas, but there's absolutely no light, and my concern, of course, is safety. I was just wondering if there's would be responsible for putting light in the air also, because that's the same stretch, basically.
Yeah, I think most of the lighting there would be covered by the city or by Excel, but it could be the school too. I mean, we don't have to go to the location and look exactly what property we're looking at.
Thank you.
Yep.
One quick question about school liaison, with AISD getting their own police department, how does that affect the city program? We still have officers out there?
Yes, sir. We still have 14 officers, and that's one up from a couple of years ago. AISD has told us their goal is to put an officer in every single school. And so with their internal police force, they're trying to build that out as well. If Mr. Loomis asked me for 20 officers tomorrow, I just can't provide him that many. And so they're trying to build a little capacity on the side there. They're assigning a lot of those officers to elementary clusters and things like that. It's worked fine. They work hand in hand. There's no hierarchy necessarily. It's whoever's there is going to handle the problem. Chief Borkwin is in charge of the AISD Police Department. We meet regularly to make sure there's no issues, but there's certainly no intent on AISD's part or CISD to reduce the number of officers, Amarillo police officers in particular. In fact, CISD is asking us pretty soon, they're going to have a formal request for more officers. And our challenge is just having that capacity, because today, if I pull that person, it's probably going to come from patrol or investigations. And so as much as I would like to put an officer in every school, it's going to come at a cost to the rest of what we're doing. So we're going to try to balance that out, meet some of those requests, and then the school districts will have to figure out some solutions on their own as well. And that's what AISD's done with their police department.
Last question, please.
I wanted to go back to the training stuff that you were talking about earlier. You all have, because you're, in order to become a police officer, your training is pretty extensive, would you agree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And the background is as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, so is there plans in the future to make that easier for candidates to get in, or do you know?
As long as I'm the chief, it's not going to be easier. The training is one piece of it. So I'll start with the background. Again, like I talked about earlier, we're not looking for perfect people. What we're looking for is adults who can make good decisions, and adults who are good communicators, and adults who have a heart for service. The last thing I need is somebody who wants to throw their authority around. The last thing I need is somebody who is immature or has addiction issues or something like that. So we're looking for people who are a good fit because we give them a ton of responsibility. We give them the authority to take somebody's freedom away. In some cases, we give them authority to take a life, and I don't take that lightly. So there's no room for negotiation, in my opinion, on backgrounds. And then training is the second piece of that. It's tough, but it's not just physically tough. It's mentally challenging. There's three aspects to our police academy training. One is physical, because we've got to be able to do certain things, regardless of our age or whatever. I've always got to be ready to be a police officer. And so sometimes that means taking physical action, whether it's chasing down a suspect, whether it's defending myself from an attack or defending somebody else from an attack. So we make sure our recruits are physically, and try to get them into a lifestyle that makes that part of their life is staying fit. Most people follow that. And regardless of what you see from the outside, everybody in the police department is doing a physical fitness test every year. And so that's a big part of it. The second part is the academics. We don't have any control over the state test, so we have to be very vigorous in the amount of information we give to our recruits before they take the state test. And then our ongoing training, we require way more than what the state requires. The state requires a minimum of 40 hours over 2 years. Most of our officers are getting about twice that as far as ongoing training, because things change rapidly. I mean, the landscape for law enforcement looks so much different than it did 33 years ago for me. If I had done nothing but academy training, I would just lose track. So that's always going to be an issue. And then the third part is the mental resilience. We start on day one in the academy building that mental resilience, because just like any tough job, whether you're a doctor or a teacher, there's a certain amount of mental resilience you've got to have to continue in the job. And so we make sure our officers understand that, are able to get through that, but are also able to decompress and realize that, hey, if you feel a certain way, that's okay. You're not meant to be a robot. You're meant to be human. So we teach them, let's get through the problem, and then on the back end, we may have to decompress and talk about it, or seek out counseling if that's an issue or something like that. Try to take some of the stigma away of that. You don't have to be big and tough to be a police officer. You just have to be mentally able to process through a crisis and then deal with it on the back end.
I'd like to say thank you for not lowering your standards.
Well, I'm proud to say that we're not going to do that.
Thank you, Chief. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Next, I'd like to bring up Justice of the Peace, Robert Taylor, so he can give y'all a little bit of information and y'all have access to ask him questions. Thank you.
I had a lot to talk about, but Chief Birkenfeld covered it all. So thank you, sir. I'd just like to give you a little background. I grew up 2 houses down the street on Northeast 22nd. Used to swing on this flagpole out here when I was little. First house I bought was over here at 2405 North Spring. When I was growing up, I remember dragging my bicycle underneath the train tracks up in here to get to Eastwood. So I don't know how dangerous that was or now, and appreciate the fact that a new bridge is going up soon over this railroad tracks. As a police officer, both at the city and county, that was a little backtracking all the way down the boulevard and back up to get to a deal over on 24. Glad to see that that's changing. I was listening to Chief Birkenfeld. He was talking about some of the changes that happened in the city. And he was talking about Sarah Dawn Lawrence, and they've just done another story about that locally. And that happened about 43 years ago, next month, in 1980. And me and 2 other officers on the Lester and Dick Weathers and myself were one of the first 3 officers that arrived on that scene. And so that kind of brings back some memories. I was telling somebody else, we're talking about memories when you're looking in the mirror and you see all your gray hairs and your wrinkles and stuff. They just don't make mirrors like they used to. A little about our office. I don't know that a lot of people know what the justice of the peace does. We do evictions, we do debit claims, we do small claims up to $20,000. We do traffic citations at DPS, SO, Sheriff's Office, Constables, right? We do, well, some of the courts do truancy violations. I did that last year. It was just too much for our little office to do, and it went back to JP1. But I wanted to give you a few statistics for the last 3 months, July through September. We had a total of 70 evictions, 60 debit claims. When I'm talking about debit claims, it's people who don't pay their credit cards. And those are kind of on the rise. 60 in the last, that's 20 a month, which is more than I've done in the last 4 years. It's getting harder to pay those debit cards. And the interest rate on some of them is 30%. So if they default on that and they come to court and they work out some type of arrangement, that interest rate really goes down to about 8.5 or no interest at all, just to get that loan paid off. We've done, or my court's done 198 magistrations in the last 3 months. Those magistrations included 28 emergency protective orders and 4 people that were DWI that had to have a breath mechanism placed on their car. We've also done 32 inquests, and that's anytime a person dies that's unattended at their home, whether it be homicide, suicide, natural death, if it's not doctor attended, a JP will have to go out to the residence or the scene. And that's divided up amongst the 4 JPs, and each month, a JP takes a week of that, 7 days. And over the course of the year, our office has done 115 inquests. I was on call last week. We had 13 more added to that. So we've taken in $71,087 in fines and court fees, and that's divided between 52,000 of that stayed at the county, and 18,000 of that went to the state. And that helps fund a lot of things that are law enforcement related for education, materials, and things of that sort that the law enforcement community needs on a state level. So that's about what we do. Anybody have any questions?
Well, do you handle the DWIs? Is that what you're saying?
Well, on magistrations, and of course the state mandates now that if it's your second violation on the DWI, you get a breathalyzer machine put on your vehicle, and you can't operate any vehicle that's not equipped with that device. Now, enforcement of that is you got to get caught a second time or a third time, but it's a court order, and they have to pay for that device to be installed on their vehicle.
You're the only court that works with that? Is that what
No.
you're saying?
Now, I'm doing the magistration part. So when you get arrested, you have to be arraigned 24 to 72 hours on certain charges, 24 and others up to 3 days. But we set the bonding requirements for those offenses. And then it's assigned to county court at law, or if it's a felony, then it's assigned to the district attorney's office. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
So let me see if I understand this correctly. So what extra funding you have helps with the law enforcement, correct?
Okay,
Is that
so,
what you're saying?
yeah, so each every time a fine is levied and paid, a certain percentage of that goes to the state. And that's, they got $1 here, $3 there, $5 for this. It graduates, let's say, for, if you pass a school bus, that whole amount that's collected on that, minimum fine on that's $550 to pass a school bus, loading or unloading. That all goes to the state. And that helps fund that safety issues involving, rural buses, city buses.
Oh, so
School
each thing that it gets money for helps with that particular area?
Right.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anybody else?
Well, are you funded through the taxing or the?
Yeah, we're funded through the tax office, and, I have to say that, our office is not a business, so to speak. We don't generate funds, we don't, we collect funds and fines and fees, but that wouldn't necessarily pay the wages of the office. But it eases the next court up. If we didn't do what we did, then we'd have to have, you'd say, a coroner that might cost you $500,000 a year. And we used to have a pathologist here is out there by the jail. The building's still there, and I think it's still operational, but it's kind of collecting dust. That's $500,000 that we save the county in performing the functions that a pathologist would do. We ease the traffic that goes to the county court at laws. And we also, the magistrates that we do is usually, it used to be done by the district judges. So we've taken that responsibility from them and allows them to free up to do other things.
Mr. Taylor, the monies that are collected here in fines and things like of that nature, that goes to the state, do they disperse it back here directly, or does it get dispersed and funneled throughout the needs of the state?
Well, your guess is as good as mine.
Oh,
on that.
okay.
All I know is, out of that 71,000 the last 3 months, $18,700 actually went to the state. Now, how they disperse
Yeah.
that is, 52,000 of that stayed here in the county. How
Sure.
they disperse that, it's not up to me.
Sure.
That goes, it goes to the general fund, and then it's expanded how they see fit.
And you're funded through the county taxes, right?
Yes, sir. There's 4, 1 JP for each precinct. So this is precinct 2, that's where I'm at. And that runs all the way down to 29th Street on the south side, the county line. And it ends right here at 24th. And it goes over to East Ridge and Highland Street. Except for this little area up here where the trailer park is, I picked that up as well. And that comes back to 24th and goes out to Loop 335. And that's where our boundary line.
Did you cover the other you go to the other precincts when you have this 1 week?
Right, we take the whole county.
You take the whole county?
Okay. Anything? Yes.
Is there somewhere online where if a citizen wanted to say, hey, I'd like to know what money was allotted to what department? Can we go look at that somewhere?
There's a budget, county has a budget on online. They'll tell you where all the funds are budgeted to. It'll tell you what Commissioner Schaffer's salary is. It'll have how much is budgeted for school, for training, all that's broke down.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
There's a question on the budget. We just passed our budget for the county, kind of like the city did for the city council. We did it was about a $78 million this year, and we have to have every line item is accounted for. So before we pass the budget, we go through every item line by line, and every dollar is accounted for within the budget, whether it's going to the sheriff's office, whether it's going to salaries, whether it's going to insurance, whether it's going to the vehicle, everything like that has to come before the commissioner's court. Like, say a while back, there was getting a new fire truck. So if the fire truck's being purchased, it has to come to the commissioner's court. It's an open record. We have it videotaped. Citizens are encouraged to be there when we do stuff like that, make comments on it, stuff like that. And all that, every dollar is counted for at the county as it is with the city. Next, I'd like to bring up Constable Georgia Estrada. And,
Hey, Commissioner, I'm gonna go ahead and not do this, and if y'all have any questions, y'all can reach out to me, email, call me, or just come up to me. Being courtesy of the time, it's already going to 12:30, so we have other speakers that want to speak. We got East Ridge that's got a lot of information, so, East Ridge neighborhood plan, sorry, Tommy Knox, and also the Vadio, is here too, so y'all if y'all have any questions, y'all are more than welcome to call me, reach out to me, or just talk to me. I'm here. So just be courtesy of time.
thank you, Mr. Rod. Josh Kraft, if you come up, please. As a city council member, place 1, Josh Kraft.
How are y'all doing today? Y'all doing good?
Yeah.
I appreciate y'all having me out here tonight, and I'll kind of be, as she was saying, respectful of y'all's time. Kind of what I'll do is I'll go through, we just passed our budget like Commissioner Schaffer was talking about, kind of hit the highlights on that, talk about some things we have done since budget, and then open it up to any questions y'all may have. So just full disclosure, I may not know the answer right now, but I'll get your information and get you an answer at the end of it, all right? So Chief Bergenfeld already hit on some of the public safety stuff in the police department. We've also added 3 new AECC positions, which AECC is the communication center for Amarillo. So anything that runs through 911, animal management, welfare, anything like that runs through there. Remodel of the facility, animal management, welfare, shelter and kennel renovations, aircraft training center, which is accounting for about $380,000 in funding combined with $3.8 million in grant funding. So on that one, we've been sending guys to Lubbock Fire Department to get that training done for aircraft and rescue firefighting. And so with this grant, we're able to fix that facility, get it back, and do all the training here in-house in Amarillo. On your street side, we've reduced property tax revenue by operations and added $1 million to the debt side. So $13.3 million in debt for street projects. So all your potholes, major street repairs that we need done, we have a dedicated funding source for that. On top of that, we've allocated $3 million in funding for the Northeast 24th Railroad Overpass, which is a total project of $11.4 million. So I know that'll affect this neighborhood greatly as well. And then $1.3 million in funding for Barrio Southeast 10th Street Avenue Streetscape Improvement Project for a total of $5.5 million with remaining from grant funding. So we'll hit those couple projects. $33 million projects on your water and sewer side. No increase to the base rate for 5/8 to 1-inch meters. Your drainage rates, we've allocated about $46 million in drainage projects. We all know that flood caused a lot of issues, and so we've noted some projects in there that we're gonna be able to hit. Dedicated dumpster replacement program, environmental health fee structure, numerous things, improvements at the Civic Center for hockey and football, traffic master plan funding, and we've also kind of done things a little different this year with a working budget. So instead of allocating all the money to certain things, we've kind of set it aside. So as projects come up during the year, we recognize different funding opportunities for things that may come up. We'll have that set aside for that. And then also some of the things we've done since budget, in July, we purchased the parkland Northeast 12th and Whitaker, for about $5,000, 28 acres. So future development in that park area. We actually went out there and helped clean up, all the trash whenever we purchased that. Recently ended paid parking downtown. Safer grant, we've allocated, we were able to receive $2.4 million through the Safer grant. So that'll fund about 12 firefighters for the next 3 years. So that way, after the 3-year mark, year 4, the city will pick up that end of it and fund those firemen. Also, we've reinitiated back into COLAs for retirees. So we talk about recruitment and retention is a big issue across the board. So that not only affects the police department, but all city employees on the retirement system, with the exception of the fire department. So that'll help with retention and retainment, when people are coming to the city and they want to look for jobs, And so we have a 3-year window on that. We're going to try to see what we can do the next few years to opt back in. I know there's a lot of state legislation that had to be pushed for this to happen, just for us to have the opportunity to buy back instead of having to pay all the way back. I think it was about 2010, 2011 when the city opted out of that. So you're talking millions of dollars that we've had to pay back. Also on that, as far as the transparency goes, so we've actually started doing a rolling agenda on our city's website. So if you want to see things that may be coming up on future agenda items, you can actually go to our city website. It helps us out as well as a council. So that way we have an idea of what's coming up instead of just the Friday before, hey, here you go. So that'll be nice for not only the council, but the public as well, to see what big issue items or, future discussion items that may be coming up. We want to be as transparent as possible on that. So, all right. So that's kind of a quick rundown. I'll open up to any questions y'all may have.
Yes, I have a question for you about Key Anchor Lake. I understand there's been around 176 police calls to that area. There's been 4 to 5 deaths in that area. I've mentioned that to the city commission several times. It doesn't appear that anybody's doing anything about the homeless, even though there's, no trespassing signs there and everything, and that just continues to grow. The trash there is crazy. I mean, I helped on that project along with the rest of the people over there. It's pretty bad.
Okay.
Now, I've also talked to some of the tourists that come through there, because I spend a lot of time in that area. And they're scary. They're scary. That's just the way it is, I would be too. When you got 3 or 4 homeless people approaching you, you don't know what's gonna happen, what's gonna take place, you're gonna get robbed, or raped, or what. That thing should have been addressed a long time ago, since the 1960s. I've approached the city many times, the past and the prior commissioners. Everybody says, I've got an article right here. Everybody says, that's a great project. We need to allocate money for that. I talked to their overall prior to him leaving. He said we could get started with the baseball diamond or soccer. We could change that either way. There's plenty of acreage there. They said about it's going to take a lot of money. Of course, it's going to take money. But they also, the dirt work was supposed to have been 250 acres. Cubic yards of dirt there. When I started talking to some other people, there was almost 500,000 cubic yards of McDonald Lake. Look at the issues that we're addressing over there at McDonald Lake, Lawrence Lake, Supply and the greenways, the pumps that we're having to pay for, the debts that have come upon us, like this recent debt that just passed, a year, 2 years ago with that elite Alexis, that our city had to pay some funds out. I'm not exact sure, but I'm gonna give you a ballpark figure of around 2 million. That's a lot of money. These are problems that have existed for too long.
Yes, sir.
I've had a discussion with Andrew Freeman, Laura Taylor, and Lord Hartman.
Okay.
I don't like discussions, but I want action.
Okay.
I've already made a boat trail to the city commission. Everything I tell you is because of the quality of life. These are safety concerns. The underpass on 3rd Street, I'm going to another project. Underpass on 3rd Street, that thing there is horrific. I've got it right here. I'll show it to you. I'm fed up because in 2004, I approached the engineer in Amarillo, Texas, to fix the one on 10th Street, and it's right there too. That was, it was horrible. The one on 3rd Street, I've actually stopped and picked chunks of concrete off that center barrier. They haven't addressed that. Since 2004, it was mentioned back, I believe, in 2016, here's 2023, nothing has been done. Not one iota.
Okay. I'll, if I can get your name and some contact information
They
after
haven't
this,
done
we'll,
that city, they don't need my name. They probably hate my guts.
well,
I'm not gonna lie to you, but the officer right here, am I pretty safe to say that there's been about 176 calls to the key actor area? I think I am, but I could be wrong, but I don't think I am.
It depends on what time frame, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty accurate on that. And that's, these are public safety concerns. If your wife or your dad or your mom or somebody was going out there and a big old slice of this concrete reached out there, it could kill them. It could kill them. They know. I'll send it to Coach County. He's got photos of this. Laura Taylor has photos of this. Mr. Harper knows about this. I make everybody know down there. Because what I'm telling you, it affects my side of town, your precinct too, you're my representative, police officer is my representative. We need to do something about this. Not only that, is I called on the underpass, they're on 3rd Street, get this. I'm gonna tell you what I did, just real quick, briefly. I called the street department, no answer. I called the city engineers, nobody responded. I called Amarillo Police Department because I wanted to get them on board. I never got a response. I called the fire marshal. I never got a call. So what I did was I called DC. DC called me the next day. DC called me the next day, then they sent me, they gave me two numbers in Austin, Texas, which I got a hold of Will Forbes with BNSF. Will Forbes said that that was a responsibility of the city, which, that's fine, you know. He said he was willing to jump on board to try to help the city do whatever we have to on that. There's retaining walls there on the north side that it looks like it could, if water got underneath it, it could lift it, it could kill somebody, real easy. Now, why did I call these people? Because they're our first responders. They will be the ones that will be there. How they will approach it, I don't know. But it is a danger. These are public safety concerns. This isn't just because I want this, you know, right? And a lot of people, I've got Taylor, Harpo, McCart, all of them have told me that that park is a global project. Larry Orpanoff told me that's a global project. It's in here, it's written. I've got the blueprints to that park. Michael Kashuba said he couldn't find those blueprints to that park. I sent them to him. He's the parks director. By now, I approached the city here just a few days ago. I told him, I said, look, this is what happens when these things don't get addressed, and I showed him some photos. I know Laura was weird, she was freaked out. This shouldn't happen. You know, we got Amarillo becoming a senior citizen town. These parks have poles like that, right in the center of the walkways. My mother got injured in one of those, and I was furious. And you did what I did. I went to the city. The next day, I walked into the city. Nobody wanted to talk to me. Not a soul. It bothers me. I can show you photos. You know, it hurt their ears a little bit when I told them about the 5 deaths that had happened there. The amount of time that we spent, the amount of time that has been, the amount of money that's spent on the pumps and the redo work in McDonald Beach. You know, that's what it is. They should have figured that before, you know, have some kind of drainage plan. Probably just trying to make it a park or whatever. You know, it's just like, yeah. You know, they talk about things because they found some bones there of some indigenous. Well, let me tell you what I did. I called the Amarillo, the Panhandle Plains Historical Museum to do a little investigation of my own. They couldn't come up with it.
So when is the next city commission meeting?
Our next city commission meeting will be November. We only have one in November.
14th. So it'll give a good chance for him to present all this.
It will be on November the 14th.
Yeah.
Does the county have any responsibility to this?
I can definitely look into that for sure. You know, that's-
Josh,
I think
Oh, I'll wait.
I've been around for a long time. I think we've been talking about this for at least 5 years.
I've been talking this for a
That
long
I can
time.
remember. I think that answer, and I'm just speaking here, I'll look into it. I think we're past that with him.
Well, to be fair, he's been here for 4 months. I've only been here
That's
for
what
10.
I'm saying, like,
Yeah.
I think it goes beyond y'all,
Right.
beyond previous commissioners. and not
I'll get
previous
with, yeah, I would love to get
But
with you and look at all this stuff.
That's what I said.
Yes.
I do, you know, I'm not holding you responsible.
Right.
I'm just saying, now that you've jumped on board, I'm bringing this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think you just reached out, like, tired of being able to look into it, because it looks like it's just getting passed down for me.
Hey, one thing I'd like to say is the previous city council, they all didn't run for reelection. And everyone that stepped up to, into this new position, every single one of them has a heart for people. They have done so much to try to communicate with us. So give him the opportunity.
Give them an opportunity.
Give him the opportunity to do something about it, all right?
But
Absolutely. I work for you, so
but
I work for all you.
I do a lot of my back work too, because I was on the CDBG board for like 12 years. So we did a lot of things.
Mhm.
And I think actually our dollars were well spent. It was all publicized in the newspaper. There was a lot of transparency there. We told you what we expected out of you, what, we expected out of us. And if you didn't, what time you was gonna start the project, what time you're gonna end the project, what kind of grants you have. If you didn't finish it or complete it, we'd like to get some of our money back. Or something to recover some of our money. It's only right. It's the right thing to do. We're all stewards of our city. All of us are. I am too. We're supposed to do the right thing. That's what I kind of expected of some of the people. And I'm not saying it's bad people. I know you can only do so much, but come on. Only improvements I have seen is on my taxes. That's it. My alleys, my trash cans, streets. I challenge you, I challenge the whole commission, I challenge anybody to take a walk with me. Just call me, we'll set a date.
Yes, sir.
That's it.
You got any other questions for Mr. Council?
Can I ask you a question about the dumpsters?
Yes, yeah.
Are you gonna put in sensors in the dumpsters to find how full they are?
So it's my understanding, I've heard that from Rich, that they're trialing something with sensors in the dumpster to judge how full they are. And to test and see, if they're skipping dumpsters as far as like, he gave me an example of where like a car was blocking a dumpster. And it sent them a notification like, hey, this dumpster's gotta go, and then they came back.
So are we becoming a sensor sensitive city government?
I hope not. I don't want a one world government. I'm not about any of that stuff. So, and that's a valid concern, when you start getting into a lot of technology and those types of issues. I think for me as your representative, one of the big things would be protecting your privacy and protecting your information moving forward. I don't want to get into where, you hear these things about like 15-minute cities, things of that nature. That's not where I want to go, especially for Amarillo. I understand with technology as it's become more innovative, we have to get on board without being left behind as things move forward. But I don't want to be to the point to where we're so far ahead, we can't keep our feet under us. So,
Yeah, that was the same thing that Rich said, so I really appreciate you saying that.
absolutely.
Mr. Kraft, I have a question. I thank you for stepping up, like Misty had mentioned.
Absolutely.
That's a really big deal, so thank you so much. I just want to say, guys, these gentlemen being here, they are trying to do the connect. And so I commend you both for that. Georgia as well. She's here, and other folks that are out here, Chief Berkenfield. So I do know that we have community groups, the Barrio Planning Center and San Jacinto and Eastridge. I think that's the mesh. That's going to be the contact. And I think with your situation, I think that bridge being already provided, I commend you guys for setting those things up as well. So, thank you.
Thank you,
And
sir.
I'm sure that Josh is going to step up to the plate like the rest of the commission has. And so, appreciate you.
Absolutely.
And I want to apologize to you publicly because I'm not attacking you.
Oh, I understand, sir.
I just wanted to make it known that it's been before all the city commissioners.
Yeah, we're finding that out about a lot of things.
On the alley trash,
Yes, sir.
and, people that have alleys generally put all their junk that had to be picked up in the alleys. And occasionally, once or twice a month, y'all would come down and pick that stuff up. Then they moved it to the front, which really makes the neighborhood look really trashy. Because it might be 3, 5, 7, some people don't even know they got to call you because they're used to you driving down. Is there any consideration putting that back in the alley?
Not at this time, no, sir. And the reason why they switched from that is because they're having a hard time, as their apparatus gets bigger, going down alleys, and it's a hard time to pick up those heavy bulk items. I think they said, I want to say they're like 6 months behind on going through the alleys and picking that stuff up. But moving it to the curbside stuff out in the front, typically if you call and say, hey, I'm going to set my stuff out on this date, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be there on that date to pick this stuff up. It's just a matter of as your equipment gets bigger, your apparatus gets bigger, the different types of apparatus and how they operate to pick bulk items up is becoming an issue in some alleys.
I have, in my neighborhood, I won't say it's all in every neighborhood, but in ours, you have 5, 6 cars to a house. And the yards are becoming parking lots.
Right.
And you ain't got room to put trash in front on top of that. Or if you park on the street, your big rig ain't gonna go around those cars that are parked on the street to pick up somebody's trash. And that car may not even be yours, it might be your neighbor's, or somebody that's, 2 or 3 houses down that didn't have enough parking spot in their yard to park. So I just think that's a real inconvenience for some communities, maybe not all.
So I could
If
see
you go
maybe,
south, they don't park in the street, out there they park in their rear garage.
I mean, I could see the benefit of maybe doing some sort of hybrid, as far as like maybe you recognize, certain neighborhoods to where it's more feasible to pick it up out front, some neighborhoods where it's more feasible to pick it up in the alley. That's something we could look at for sure. I think like it goes back to as far as the maneuverability of the equipment they're using to pick up the heavy junk.
That would be one thing I would hold someone for.
Right.
Yeah, right behind you. You have a question, sir?
Yes, I was gonna ask about the street. You said we was gonna patch potholes and stuff. Well, last time they done these streets, they come in October, after it already got freezing, and put some tar and gravel and made the rub board, because the gravel didn't stick. They passed the bond, this was in October. In November, at the election, they passed the bond to redo all the roads in East Ridge, and ain't nothing been done since. We're just now getting the rub board rubbed down, and now the cracks are really weak and stuff is coming back through them.
Coming back here.
And like I say, they passed this bond issue after they done this mess up job that they did. Because gravel's not gonna stick in cold tar. And then all the gravel ended up people's yards.
All right, yes, sir, I got that down. We'll look at that one. Do you have any particular area or streets or anything, or is it just the neighborhood as a whole?
Basically, the whole neighborhood, because like I said, when they come through and did this, there was a lot of cracks in all the streets. And this was in October, and we had a cold October that year, and it was already too cold for the tar. When they put the gravel in, it didn't stick.
Didn't stick, okay.
So it just made a rough one.
Yes, sir. Anybody else got
I
anything?
got another question. From I-40 and Ross going south, there's a bunch of power poles there in the way. I've seen people riding their little power chairs down through there. I understand that those power poles should be moved and need to be moved because somebody's going to be killed there on a power chair.
So they blocking the sidewalk?
Sidewalks.
I-40 Ross South?
You look about the post office, there's no ramps there.
Okay. And you're talking actual ones that are straight up and down an XL install?
Yeah, and Laura's, I believe in Laura's stories, it said that they couldn't be moved because of business. But I believe that I could be wrong, but on the Disabilities Act of Title II, I believe that they can be moved. On the American Disabilities Act, check Title II.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Judge.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all.
Thank you,
If anybody needs to get a hold of me, just josh.craft with a C at amarillo.gov, and I typically respond right away, so I was really busy, so. I appreciate y'all having me today. It's an honor to be here. I look forward to coming back sometime and continuing this. So thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you. One thing I do ask, we got, about another 20 minutes because we were going until 2 o'clock, but this location got moved at the last minute. So we're having to cut short a little bit after 1. We need to cut it out of here. So I got the Barrio Neighborhood Planning Committee and East Ridge Neighborhood Planning Committee. Also have a little bucket over here. This was given to us very last minute, about 6 o'clock last night. So if you'd like to give a little donation that we can give to the, pastor here, the father here, that'd be great if you'd like to. With that, I'd like to bring up Rebecca with Barrio Neighborhood Planning Committee, please.
Hello, my name is Becky with with the Barrio Neighborhood Planning Committee. And I guess I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we're doing and who we are. Our committee started in 2018. We are just a neighborhood improvement committee, and there are some things that we're working on right now that we want to let you all know about. We are currently raising funds for a new pocket park. It's a little neighborhood park that is going to be at 918 South Houston. So it's just right off the 10th on Houston Street. It's gonna be a little area where the community can get together or possibly even rent the space for events, for fiestas, for whatever the community needs. The fundraiser right now for that park is selling. We have monuments. This is our second monument that's going up. The monuments are set up at different areas in the barrio. We are currently selling 12 by 12 inch spaces on these monuments for either families or businesses. They are at $500 for each side. You can put a business logo, you can put a family picture. These are just ways to, first of all, of course, raise money for the Barrio Neighborhood Planning Committee and for the pocket park that we're building, but also just a way to have your business out there, be seen, have your, commemorate your family members or your family history in the barrio. We're hoping for June of 2024 to have it somewhat open. After that, there will be a little playground that we'll still be working on. Let's see. We want to thank Potter County for matching our park asphalt funds for $39,150. That is going towards putting asphalt on that little pocket park. Let's see some other things that we are doing. On November the 2nd, we are teaming up with St. Andrew's Church for a celebration of Dia de los Muertos. This is going to be, we're hoping, a really fun event for the community. They are located at 1600 South Georgia. It's going to begin at 5:30 p.m. The donations, again, will benefit the BNPC. There's going to be mariachi band. There's going to be folklorico dancers. We're going to set up ofrendas in the tradition of Dia de los Muertos, both inside the church and there will be a reception afterwards with the dancers and the mariachi band. We're pretty excited about that. We think it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope everybody can make it out there. There's no charge, but we are accepting donations that are going to go towards the BNPC. Also, another fundraiser, of course, is we are involved with the Panhandle Gives campaign that runs from November the 20th through the 28th. And we very much appreciate any donations to be designated to the BNPC to help us with these projects. We did name our little pocket park. It will now be called La Placita. This was a lot of fun to name. We had a lot of suggestions. We actually did a contest with Barrio residents, and that's what we got the name. So that's what, that was the most popular of the submissions. Currently, we have 13 board members. We have, our next meeting is scheduled for February the 28th. We are doing quarterly board meetings. Everyone is welcome. We would love to have everyone there if you want to see more about what we're about and to see what our projects are and what the next things we're working on are. The meeting is at 6 o'clock. It will be at the Amarillo Area Foundation. And you're all invited. Another thing that is a big thing that we're working on, of course, is the streetscape on 10th Avenue. Of course, for the barrio, that's sort of our main street, you might say. So the streetscape is in cooperation with TechStrot. They're the ones that are pretty much funding a lot of that program and that project. But we're pretty excited about it. That's going to be a little bit, but we are definitely still raising money for that. We're hoping that that's going to be a vast improvement on what we currently have with a walking lane and a bike lane and trees and street lights. And I think it's going to be really beautiful. It's going to run from Arthur Street to Ross. That's where we're starting anyway. But does anyone have any questions?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
I've been curious about the barrio's line definition that it stops at 29, and yet it doesn't include the Caprock area.
It doesn't.
And I'm
It
just
is.
curious why that's not part of the barrio definition.
I don't know. I really, to be truthful, I really don't know. I think those were boundaries that were set quite a long time ago.
Right.
And so it's just, as the barrio grew, as the community grew, I don't think that it just expanded with it. So no, it does not include the Caprock area, although that is very near and dear to our hearts. That's where our kids go to school.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
I know you said y'all have board meetings quarterly. Do y'all have community meetings that are like a specific topic or a different topic every month? Or is it just the board meeting?
No, we just have the board meetings. We do, because we still are a pretty small organization, or community organization. Our board members, we have a small number of board members. We do a lot of our communicating. It's just hard to meet a lot because everybody's busy. But so we do a lot of our communicating through texts and emails and things like that. I have brought some business cards for the BMPC. I put them back at the back table. It's got a QR code that goes directly to our website. It's got an email address. If anyone is interested in what we're doing, or if you want to, contribute your thoughts and ideas, we would be more than happy to hear from you. But yes, we do quarterly meetings with that. Everyone is invited to. And we do have a Facebook presence that if there's anything special that we have going on, that definitely is going to be on our Facebook page, or any events we want to share with not only our events, but also events for the other barrio organizations that are doing something. We really want to get the word out to everybody. Thank you all.
East Ridge Neighborhood Association. Y'all, these neighborhood associations and Barrio Neighborhood Planning Association, they're a big part of our community. They work with the local government, both the city and the county, and even the state at times. And being part of them, I highly encourage, get with them, see how you can help out and be part of what they're doing with that. I'd like to bring up Tommy Knox and his committee, and then we'll adjourn as soon as he's finished.
Thanks, Tommy. I'm Tommy Knox, president of the East Ridge Community Association.
Also with me, I have part of my board. If y'all stand, your name and
My name is Vince Leeds. I'm the vice president, and we're missing 3 more board members.
My name is Schaffer. I'm the treasurer of this community association. My name is Andre. I'm his assistant.
And also I have with me today, Kimberly. Yeah, come on, speak.
My name is Kate. I'm an intern at Joe Tax and Business Solution.
These are all part of my committee, of my board. Like I said, there are several of us missing today because of different obligations that we had previously already set up. But I want to first say that I want to thank Blair for having this town hall meeting and all the people that came up to speak, and of course the residents that came out to be a part of this. So I'm gonna try to cut this short because of the time restraints, but I'm gonna hit some of the topics, some of the highlights of the East Ridge Community Association. You can see over here basically how we were going. We're not gonna do this presentation, we don't have time. So I'm just gonna hit some of the topics that I've heard in the audience as far as the overpass. The overpass has been funded, as you heard. Now, how that first got started is we've been working on that for over 20 years. And finally, well, I've been working on it for over 20 years. And finally, we just realized that we were not going to get heard on a certain level. So I wrote a letter to the Federal Department of Transportation up in Washington, D.C. And within 8 months, we got a reply back that they did fund the project for $8.4 million. And then the city is coming in with 26% to make that a total of around $12 million project. The street lights, also, that's another project that we've heard from the community. It's being a very concern, and we have approached that, and we met with the city planning and engineers and traffic and several other people, Excel Energy. And we got approved for 48 lights that are going in the East Ridge community, 48 lights. That will help out substantially because of the fact that, that's one of the projects that we've heard a lot of inquiries about as far as the community. So that project is underway. So I think that was one of the main issues in the East Ridge community is lighting. So that has been addressed, and we are working on a solution. So sidewalks, that's another issue. We are currently doing a study on the sidewalks. We have put funds aside to approach that project. Yes, we have a problem with sidewalks. Some areas of sidewalks have been, the curbs have been removed, I just feel like that, to where you can park on the sidewalk, which is something that I never understood why the city would have done something like that, but it's done. But we've addressed that problem and some of the other sidewalk issues that we're having in the community. Funds have been, like I said, put aside for that. I'm just cutting this short because of the respect for owner. And, okay, the dumpster project, we've also had a lot of issues about trash. Well, East Ridge Community Association, we were the first ones to come up with the dumpster idea. You'll see this around the city in a lot of spaces now to where we put the dumpsters out by the parks. So this bulk trash and stuff, you can actually come up and dump. You've seen the dumpsters out at the libraries. That was part of one of our projects. It was so successful that the city decided to extend that all across the city. And that project is working very well. Housing needs also, we have a project that is in place for housing. The Buffalo Springs, whatever it's called, is a new addition that's coming into the East Ridge area. And I'm sorry just to sound so blasé about everything, but I had a different approach to today's meeting. But like I said, we ran out of time, and so if there are any questions,
Got that.
When is, the overpass gonna start? When are you over there, or when is the projected time for that?
Okay, this is what I have. The latest update is that project is not something that we just get funds for and then start right away, deciding that we're going to start digging up dirt and doing what we do. So there is a process, and this is what I have as far as the process. So the last thing that I have on here is basically, let me go over some of the parts of the process. So number one is the grantee outreach, in other words, getting with the people that have something to do with the land and the area over there, where this overpass is going to go. The project kickoff meeting, which would be comprised of, once again, having another meeting with the people that will be part of the planning and designing of the overpass. So to say exactly where we are right now, it's just that we're in the planning process, we're in the process of getting easements and things like that that are above where I am. I'm just the one to deliver the message to the people that you need to hear this to get these projects underway. So all this will be updated as soon, so all this will be updated as soon as we get more information. The street lights, like I said, we have the applications that we will need, the easements that we're gonna need to have signed by residents that these streetlights we're gonna place them. So they will have to sign these, we will notarize them. Another thing that I want to pass on to the East Ridge community is we also have what's called a business improvement grant. This grant is basically based on the fact that people that have businesses and would like to do some upkeep to the building, like signs or outside painting or things like that. So we do have those funds available. It's called the BIG, the Business Improvement Grant. And I'm gonna basically just cut it short. Any questions?
Is that business improvement plan, is that through, the organization, or is that something from the city, or?
It is part of the East Ridge Community Plan. Each community have something similar to this. So the barrio will have one, San Jacinto will have one, and North Heights will have one. What happened is we were allocated around $750,000 and then another additional 100,000. So we have a budget of around about 800,000 on different projects that we could use for various projects in the community. Now, I see that there was a lot of issues and things that people are trying to get out. We're also taking in new members. So if you want to be a part of the solution, then we need to hear from you. So we have applications over here for new membership. Now the board is full, but we need members that actually be a part of the community that relay and be on these different committees to where we can get things done. So there is a way to approach some of the issues that you're having in the community, and that's by being part of the association. Yes, ma'am.
I would love to work with you, and I think my group would love to work with you as well on that.
Will get with us as soon as we finish up here. We have applications and we're looking for members. So any more questions? Oh, by the way, I want to recognize the West Texas Legal Aid, Kimberly McDaniel.
Good afternoon. My name is Kimberly McDaniel. I'm a staff attorney with Legal Aid of Northwest Texas. And so we're a nonprofit law firm, and we provide free legal services to low-income individuals. We do practically anything civil, but no class action, no personal injury, and no criminal cases. Since we do provide our services for free, there has to be income guidelines, and we have to do conflicts check. As long as you pass go on those two, and your issue is one of our list of priorities, we'll take the case. Or maybe we don't take it, we'll provide you with some kind of advice to put you on your next steps. Once again, it's free. I put a few brochures here. We also have a legal aid line where you can call during normal business hours and give them your facts. They check your information. They check to make sure no conflict. those are a go, and they'll give you legal advice over the phone, as long as you meet the income requirements. We go off the federal poverty scales, and the max you can go for majority of our grants are 200%. So if you're under 200% of the federal poverty scales, then you'll qualify for our services. Usually that's like, it's more than McDonald's, but not as much as Target. But if you have any questions, feel free to come to me. We do not give legal advice on the spot, because you gotta go through all the requirements first. But we can definitely see, I can definitely see what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Like I said, we are the East Ridge Community Association. We are you. Everybody in this room is a part of this association, so we need your input. And the way that you could do, get that out there is, like I said, is to join the association, so you can have a voice that we take to the city. Our plan was adopted by the city, so it is part of the city overall plan. So it is recognized. So that's a step that we haven't had before, that we have now. So these ideas and, like I said, complaints or whatever, you have a way now of addressing them through this association and the other community associations around the city. So that's all the questions. Then I'll hand this back over to Blair, and we'll try to get out of here.
Thank you all, everybody, for coming. Want to keep growing this community. We have about 35 people here today. I'd love 100 at the next one. It'll be January 20th at the Alamo Center. Please let your neighbors know, friends know, coworkers know. To close out and say, please go vote. The voting centers are on the tables and also up here on the tables. And with that being said, we've got elections coming up in March. We have Sam here that's going to be running for office, and also Caroline Farley is going to be running for office. Please get with them outside and talk to them and get to know them and see if that's who you'd like to vote for. With that, thank y'all very much for supporting us. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes. And Charlotte also. So please get with them, talk with them, find out if that's who you'd like to vote for, and get to know them and let's support them. And thank you, everybody, for coming today. Thank you very much. I don't have the time set yet, but we'll show up.
You couldn't find it?